You're mistaken. I truly miscarried my child because of the medicine you gave me that year. Have you forgotten? Eleanor stood stunned. Then who is this child? Why does he look so much like William?
Greenwich, Connecticut, on Thanksgiving night. Outside, the season's first snow was falling thickly, laying a shroud of pure white over the old pine trees and the winding roads leading into the Vanderbilt family's historic estate. But in sharp contrast to the bone-cutting cold of the north, inside the multi-million-dollar mansion was an atmosphere of fabricated warmth. The brilliant crystal chandeliers illuminated the luxurious furnishings. The dry wood crackled softly in the fireplace, blending with gentle classical music in the background. This was not merely a family dinner. This was a political and power stage, attended by senators and seasoned old foxes from Wall Street. Sarah stood there in her high-end silk gown, forcing the smile on her lips not to falter. At 30 years old, she embodied every quality of a successful woman, beautiful, refined, and once an outstanding architect who had graduated from a prestigious Ivy League school. Yet behind that flawless exterior was a soul slowly withering away. It had been 2 years since the day she was forced to abandon her career and step back, taking on the role of the keeper of the hearth for this household. Eleanor, her mother-in-law, sat at the head of the dining table like a queen reigning over her kingdom. The 62-year-old woman was known as the Iron Lady. She could smile at you while her eyes remained sharp as daggers, ready to pierce through any form of resistance. Beside her was William, Sarah's husband. With a movie star handsome face and a composed, elegant demeanor, he always presented himself as a genuine golden boy, a husband who doted on his wife completely in front of the crowd. The conversation at the table drifted toward new urban planning projects. Sensing a rare opportunity to be herself, Sarah eagerly interjected, "Senator, actually, I'm currently finalizing a proposal on green architecture. I'm planning to reopen my own architecture firm early next year to—" A sharp clink cut through the air. Eleanor set her silver fork down onto the porcelain plate, interrupting Sarah with a smile of condescension and bestowal. "Oh, my dear Sarah, architects are in the end just certified builders. Don't bore our guests with such trivial matters. Your one and only noble duty right now is to give birth to a fourth-generation heir for the Vanderbilt family, not to go around drawing houses for strangers." The room froze instantly. Sarah felt her face burn in humiliation in front of the most powerful figures present. She turned to William, her eyes filled with a silent plea, hoping that the husband who had always sworn his love would say at least one fair word for her. But William did not look at her. He casually lifted his glass of red wine, took a light sip, then smiled and said, "Mother's right, my love. Why put yourself through the hardship of working? Just enjoy life and use the unlimited credit card I gave you. The outside world is brutal. It's not meant for someone as sensitive as you." William's hand resting on Sarah's shoulder brought no warmth at all. It was as cold as a golden shackle. Amid the cheerful laughter of the guests, Sarah suddenly realized a bitter truth. In this golden-plated house, her voice, her dreams, and the respect owed to her amounted to absolutely nothing. The morning after the Thanksgiving dinner, the mansion was engulfed in a terrifying silence. Sarah sat in her small study, her heart pounding as she decided to take the first step toward reclaiming her freedom. She needed capital. She remembered she still had over $200,000 in personal savings, money she had accumulated during her years of relentless work as an architect before marriage. She planned to quietly invest that money into a small startup project run by an old friend, a stepping stone toward escaping her dependence on the Vanderbilt family. However, when Sarah logged into her banking app, a glaring red line appeared on the screen. "Account temporarily locked. Please contact the administrator." A chill ran straight down her spine. Sarah immediately called the bank branch manager, a longtime acquaintance of her husband's family. On the other end of the line, his voice hesitated. "Mrs. Vanderbilt, we received reports of suspicious, fraudulent transactions from your account. At the request of the family's legal guarantor, Mrs. Eleanor, the account has been frozen for verification. Any procedure to reopen it requires her signature or Mr. Williams." Sarah lowered the phone, her hands trembling. She hadn't spent a single dollar from that money, so why were there suspicious transactions? At that very moment, a steady knock sounded at the door. Eleanor entered with a small tea tray, her face calm like a winter lake. She gently placed a sleek black credit card on the desk, a supplementary card bearing Sarah's name, but directly linked to Eleanor's master account. "I heard you ran into a little trouble with the bank. At your age, women tend to shop impulsively and are easily deceived by fanciful investments. I asked them to manage it for you to prevent unnecessary risks. From now on, just use this card. It has no limit. Buy whatever you like." She paused, her sharp eyes locking onto Sarah's. "I'm doing this to help you manage your spending sensibly. A Vanderbilt wife shouldn't be burdened with dry numbers. Just enjoy taking care of your appearance and tending to the household." When Eleanor left the room, Sarah's phone vibrated. A notification appeared. $0 transaction on supplementary card account activated. She realized that from this moment on, every step she took was being monitored. Whether she bought a cup of Starbucks coffee or a lipstick, a notification would instantly appear on Eleanor's phone. That powerful black card was not a privilege, it was an electronic collar, tightening around the last remnants of her freedom, turning her into a luxurious beggar within her own life. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Greenwich mansion grew thick and suffocating, like a lavish tomb. Sarah began noticing strange signs within her own room. A notebook she had just placed on her desk would suddenly disappear, only to reappear in a kitchen drawer, a place she was certain she had never touched. The architectural sketches she kept hidden in the closet were disturbed, as if someone had secretly rummaged through them, inspecting every page while she was away. Whenever Sarah entered the living room, the servants, Eleanor's eyes and ears, would immediately fall silent and lower their heads in avoidance. She suspected Maria, the long-serving housekeeper, was secretly watching her. But when she brought this up to William, he did not get angry. He simply put down his newspaper and looked at her with a mixture of concern and pity. "My love, you've been acting strange lately," William said, his voice low and soothing, yet cold. "Maybe because you don't have a job, your mind keeps imagining things that aren't real. Maria has been with my family for 20 years. She's absolutely loyal. You're probably just too stressed." Eleanor followed up during afternoon tea, her voice dripping with honey, yet laced with poison. "You look so pale, Sarah. Forgetful, panicky, suspicious of those around you. Those are classic symptoms of anxiety disorder. I can't allow you to destroy yourself like this." Under the pressure of such concern, Sarah was forced to see Dr. Sterling, the private psychologist of the Vanderbilt family. In the therapy room, filled with the drowsy scent of lavender essential oil, Sterling did not listen to Sarah's fears of being monitored. Instead, he continuously asked leading questions, digging deeper into her supposed emotional instability. At the end of the session, he delivered a clinical diagnosis. emotional disorder caused by prolonged psychological stress with signs of mild delusion. Sarah stared at the report in shock. She did not know that shortly afterward, Sterling accepted a thick envelope from Eleanor. His task was not to heal her, but to use medicine to legitimize the process of turning Sarah into a woman deemed mentally incompetent. Standing in front of the mirror late that night, Sarah wondered whether she truly was going insane. This subtle manipulation was more terrifying than any physical abuse because it made her begin to doubt her own memory and reality itself. She realized she was sinking deeper into a swamp where every attempt to struggle only caused her to be dragged further down by the label of mentally unstable they were determined to pin onto her. At the moment when the boundary between reality and psychological manipulation began to blur, an unexpected event struck like a miracle. Sarah became pregnant. The instant the test strip showed 2 lines, a surge of hope flared inside her, sweeping away the darkness of doubt and loneliness. She told herself that perhaps this child was the final thread holding everything together, the key that could unlock understanding and compassion within the Vanderbilt family. The reaction of her husband's family shifted at a dizzying speed, as if a film had suddenly cut to an entirely different scene. Eleanor, the woman who had always looked at her with dagger-sharp eyes, now became strangely gentle. One sunlit morning in the tea room, she opened a red velvet box, took out a priceless heirloom pearl necklace, and personally fastened it around Sarah's neck. "You are carrying the bloodline of our ancestors," she said, her voice trembling as if she were truly moved. "From now on, you don't need to worry about anything anymore. Everything finest in this world belongs to you and this baby." William's transformation was even more astonishing. The husband, who had always been distant and firmly aligned with his mother, now became a true family man. He gave up lavish Wall Street parties, made sure to be home before 6 p.m. every evening to walk with Sarah around the estate grounds. He brewed tea with his own hands, read books aloud to her, and placed gentle kisses on her forehead. Those tender gestures made Sarah begin to question herself. Perhaps she had been too sensitive before. Perhaps all the tension had simply been hormones or the pressure of life. Sarah immersed herself in that warmth and attention. She began to dream of a brighter future, one where she would finally have an official standing, where her voice would be respected because she was the mother of the future heir. She felt stronger than ever because now she was no longer fighting alone. She was willing to set aside her architectural drawings, to set aside her doubts about the frozen bank account, and simply enjoy this happiness. Sarah did not know that this warmth was merely a brilliant layer of gold plating covering a trap far more brutal beneath. The Vanderbilt family did not love her. They were merely cherishing the precious vessel that was protecting their vast fortune. Despite living in velvet-lined protection since becoming pregnant, the instincts of a woman who had once survived the harsh world of architecture kept Sarah from fully letting down her guard. She understood that in the Vanderbilt world, no gift was ever free. One late night, after William had fallen into a deep sleep following an extravagant dinner, Sarah quietly slipped out of bed. She needed to find her old personal tax documents to calculate a financial escape route, and her husband's study was the only place she had not searched thoroughly. William's study reeked of power, with floor-to-ceiling oak bookshelves, the scent of expensive leather, and a lingering hint of cigar smoke. After nearly an hour of silent searching, Sarah's hand accidentally brushed against a hidden drawer buried deep beneath the mahogany desk. Inside were not tax papers, but a thick file stamped in red with the seal of New York's most prestigious law firm. Vanderbilt Trust Fund Agreement updated. Under the dim beam of her phone flashlight, Sarah trembled as she flipped through the dry legal pages. On page 15, her heart seemed to stop. A special clause was underlined in red ink. The sole beneficiary, William Vanderbilt, shall receive and manage the entire inheritance valued at $500 million USD, along with the associated real estate, on the condition that he maintains a legal marriage in the image of a happy family with his current wife, Sarah Vanderbilt, for a minimum continuous period of 10 years from the date of marriage registration. The next line was even bitterer. In the event of divorce or legal separation prior to the above period, the entire trust fund shall be transferred to charitable organizations, and William Vanderbilt shall forfeit all inheritance rights. Sarah felt the ground collapse beneath her feet. As of now, they had been married for only 4 years. So all the sudden care, the heirloom pearl necklace, and even William's affectionate gestures during this time had not been for her, but for that figure of $500 million. She was not a wife, not a life partner, but merely a binding condition in a lucrative business contract. The baby in her womb, instead of being the crystallization of love, now appeared as the strongest chain they intended to use to bind her to this house for the remaining 6 years. Standing in the darkness, tears streaming down in suffocated rage, Sarah realized she was living inside a cage gilded by greed and cold-blooded calculation. The truth about the trust fund plunged Sarah into days of terror as she had to pretend she knew nothing while enduring her mother-in-law's suffocating care. Eleanor began imposing a strict nutritional regimen on Sarah. Every morning, she personally brought up a glass of juice along with a vial of pills she called special vitamins exclusively for the Vanderbilt bloodline, custom compounded in Switzerland. They will help the baby develop superior intelligence and a strong skeletal structure, she said, her eyes never leaving Sarah until she swallowed the pill whole. The worst happened on a snowy, rain-soaked night in the 12th week of pregnancy. After taking the evening dose, Sarah felt a violent cramping pain surge from her lower abdomen, spreading rapidly like knives stabbing through her pelvis. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was cold, savage, and carried with it a loss that her maternal instinct screamed meant something terrible was happening. She screamed William's name, but he only stood in the doorway, looking at her with an unreadable expression before carrying her to the ambulance. In the stark white emergency room reeking of disinfectant, Sarah faded in and out of consciousness to the rhythmic beeping of machines. When she woke, the ceiling spun above her, and there was an empty, icy void inside her chest. The doctor entered and gently shook his head. "We're very sorry. The fetus is no longer viable. There was a sudden chemical imbalance in your body that caused excessive uterine contractions." Sarah lay there, tears streaming down her temples, but what hurt more than the loss itself was what she heard next. Through the half-closed hospital room door, she saw Eleanor standing and speaking with a man in a black suit, the family's private attorney. There was not a trace of sorrow or compassion on Eleanor's face for the grandchild that had just been lost. She asked coldly, "Does this miscarriage affect the validity of the 10-year clause in the trust agreement? Without a child, does Sarah still qualify as the legal wife required for William to maintain the fund?" The attorney flipped through the file and replied calmly, "Madam, the clause only requires the maintenance of the marriage. Whether or not there is a child does not affect the $500 million as long as she remains Mr. William's wife until the end of the 10th year." Eleanor let out a breath of relief, a faint smile appearing on her wrinkled face. "Good. then there's no need to worry too much. Let her rest for a while. Sarah clenched the bedsheet until her fingertips turned white. In that moment, her heart hardened completely. She realized that the death of her child was not a mere accident, and that these people were not just greedy, they were demons wearing human skin. The pain of losing her child forged a ruthless will for revenge. She would not cry anymore. She would make them pay with the very things they cherished most: power and wealth. After leaving the hospital, Sarah returned to the mansion like an empty shell. She understood that to survive inside the tiger's den, she had to play the role of a woman completely destroyed by the pain of miscarriage. She spent most of her time lying in a darkened room, pretending to drift in and out under the effects of the sedatives Eleanor regularly brought to her. But Sarah never swallowed them. She hid the pills under her tongue and flushed them down the toilet the moment they left. She needed a clear mind to hear the truth. Late one night, as pale moonlight slipped through the gap in the curtains, Sarah heard William's heavy footsteps entering the room, followed by Eleanor's low voice. Believing Sarah was deeply asleep from the medication, they stood right beside her bed and began to talk. "Mom," William's voice rang out, stripped of any fake tenderness and replaced with open irritation. "Isn't the dosage of those sedatives a bit too high? She looks like she's on the verge of dying. You need to remember, I need her alive to keep this marriage going for another 6 years so I can secure the trust fund. If she dies now, that $500 million will go up in smoke." Eleanor let out a cold snort. "I know exactly what I'm doing. That dosage is enough to keep her weak and dependent, with no strength left to dream about architecture firms or freedom. Otherwise, how would we have dealt with the pregnancy? You know very well I don't want any additional troublesome heirs right now to dilute the assets." William sighed, his voice chillingly indifferent. "I know. A miscarriage now is better than letting her give birth and then having to divide the assets with the child later. Besides, I haven't finished dealing with that model Jessica. She's demanding another apartment in Manhattan to keep quiet about the illegitimate child. I'm exhausted by all these women." Lying still beneath the thin blanket, Sarah felt a cold chill run down her spine while her heart burned with a blazing hatred. So William was never weak. He was not Eleanor's victim. He was an accomplice, a cold-blooded demon who had directly helped his mother poison his own wife and kill his unborn child, all to protect his inheritance and conceal his decadent life outside. Every ounce of love, every show of concern before this had been nothing but a cheap performance. Sarah clenched her fists beneath the blanket and swore that she would not simply run away. She would make both mother and son pay a price far greater than all the money they worshipped. The truth about William and the death of her child transformed Sarah into someone else entirely, cold, calculating, and ruthless, no less than those imprisoning her. She understood that to escape the Vanderbilt family, she could not flee with her feet alone. She had to flee with her mind. Sarah began by perfectly playing the role of a wife shattered by post-miscarriage depression. She let her hair grow disheveled, her eyes dull and unfocused, and she obeyed every demand Eleanor made. This absolute docility caused the Vanderbilt mother and son to lower their guard, believing she had completely broken. But beneath that ruined exterior was a brain working at full capacity. Because every credit card transaction was monitored by Eleanor, Sarah launched a sophisticated money laundering operation right inside the mansion. Using her knowledge of luxury fashion and anonymous resale platforms like The Real Real, she secretly photographed Hermes bags, Cartier watches, and priceless jewelry William had given her as apologies. She sent them out through courier services under the pretense of warranty returns, but in reality sold them for cash. She instructed that the proceeds be transferred into anonymous e-wallets, then withdrawn as small denomination bills, which she hid deep inside the bedroom ventilation system, a place where, with her architectural expertise, she knew no camera or staff member could ever reach. At the same time as building her financial reserves, Sarah began gathering legal weapons. She no longer sneaked into William's study. She walked in openly under the excuse of cleaning to clear her mind. During those solitary hours, she used her technical skills to hack into her husband's personal computer, copying massive amounts of data on tax fraud and bribery transactions the Vanderbilt family company had carried out to cover up scandals. Everything was stored on an encrypted USB drive, which she wore around her neck like a cheap pendant hidden beneath thick sweaters. More than that, Sarah secretly installed miniature recording devices in the tea room and dining room. She waited patiently, collecting fragments of conversations between Eleanor and William about the trust fund, the sedative dosages, and William's illegitimate child with the model Jessica. Piece by piece, the evidence accumulated, turning the USB into a nuclear bomb ready to detonate if the Vanderbilts dared block her path to freedom. July 4th, Independence Day of the United States. A bitter irony that Sarah chose as the decisive moment of her life. As every year, the Vanderbilt family hosted an extravagant fireworks party on a yacht in the Hamptons, a gathering place for the ultra-wealthy. Sarah, with a pale face and lifeless lips, delivered a flawless performance of a severe migraine caused by the side effects of the sedatives. Eleanor, after checking on Sarah lying motionless in the darkened room, left smugly with William, reminding the security team to guard the outer perimeter strictly. The moment the sound of the last limousine engine faded behind the ancient oak trees, Sarah sprang into action. The dullness vanished from her eyes, replaced by the sharp focus of an architect calculating every move. Fireworks began exploding in the distant sky over the beach, the continuous booms forming a perfect curtain of sound to conceal all activity inside the mansion. Sarah moved quickly to William's study. With a small screwdriver hidden in her sleeve, she broke the latch of the secret drawer she had studied carefully for weeks and retrieved her passport, which the family had confiscated immediately after the wedding. Next, she climbed on a chair, removed the ventilation cover, and pulled out the plastic bags of cash along with the USB containing the Vanderbilt family's sentence. Every action was precise, with no wasted movement. She did not choose any of the luxury cars in the garage, from the Porsche to the Range Rover, because she knew they were all equipped with advanced GPS tracking systems Eleanor could activate remotely. Instead, Sarah slipped out through the servants' back door and headed toward the storage sheds. She knew the elderly gardener was away for the holiday and had left behind an old rusted pickup truck from the 1990s. The vehicle had no tracking, attracted no attention, and most importantly, lay completely outside the family's electronic security system. As Sarah turned the key, the engine struggled to life, blending with the brilliant fireworks exploding overhead. She drove out through a side gate along a shortcut cutting through the forest, a route she had memorized from old land development plans of the estate. In the rearview mirror, the gold-plated mansion shrank and then vanished into the darkness. Sarah pressed the accelerator, heading straight for JFK Airport. Her fight for independence had officially begun, not with declarations, but with an escape into the deep night. Aboard the luxurious yacht in the Hamptons, Eleanor casually glanced at the surveillance app on her iPad. The smile on her lips froze instantly when she saw that Sarah's room was empty, the blanket cleverly stuffed with pillows to deceive the camera. Without panicking, she quietly stepped into a private room and called the family's private security team instead of the police. Find her immediately. Bring her back at all costs, but absolutely do not let the media or the police get involved. The Vanderbilt family's reputation is more important than her life. Meanwhile, on the interstate highway heading toward New York, Sarah was driving the battered old pickup truck with her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. In the rearview mirror, she saw the headlights of two black SUVs racing toward her at terrifying speed. Eleanor's security team had traced her faster than expected. The chase became suffocating as the luxury vehicles attempted to force Sarah's pickup into the median. But Sarah was not a fragile woman in panic. She was an architect with an instinctive ability to read maps and space. Recalling the area's traffic layout, she suddenly swerved, charging straight into the underground parking garage of a busy shopping center near the airport, where a 4th of July night shopping festival was underway, crowded with thousands of people. There, she abandoned the pickup truck, removed her outer jacket to reveal the plain outfit she had prepared in advance, and melted into the dense crowd. She did not take a traditional taxi. Sarah used a burner phone she had bought with cash weeks earlier to book a rideshare, requesting pickup at a hotel lobby 2 blocks away. While the Vanderbilt security team was still scrambling to locate the pickup truck inside the parking garage, Sarah had already arrived at Terminal 4 of JFK Airport. Standing at the check-in counter, Sarah felt cold sweat soak through her back. Every man in a black suit who passed by made her flinch, fearing he might be one of Eleanor's agents. At the final moment, as the boarding announcement echoed through the terminal, she hurried into the jet bridge. She did not fly directly to Seattle. To erase her trail completely, Sarah booked a layover to London, then planned to use a different identity to return to the west coast of the United States. When the plane took off and the brilliant lights of New York slowly receded beneath the wings, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. The gold-plated cage was left behind, but the real battle was only beginning. 3 days after the breathless escape, Sarah sat in a small, cheaply rented apartment in Seattle. Outside the window, the fine drizzle typical of the Pacific Northwest blanketed the city, creating a strange sense of peace and safety, something she had not felt in 4 years. On the table, a low-cost laptop she had just purchased with cash was open to a draft email. Sarah's finger hovered over the send key, trembling slightly, while her eyes were cold as tempered steel. She pressed send. At the same time, back at the mansion in Greenwich, a psychological earthquake erupted. William and Eleanor were sitting with their lawyers, trying to figure out how to deal with Sarah's disappearance, when the email notification chimed simultaneously on their devices. The message was brief, but heavy enough to destroy the entire Vanderbilt empire. Sarah had attached 3 encrypted files. The first was a scanned copy of a unilateral divorce petition bearing her signature. The second was a detailed list of shell companies and tax evasion records of the family conglomerate. The third, and most terrifying of all, contained audio recordings confessing to Sarah's poisoning and the manipulation of medical results. Sarah's message appeared sharp and unyielding. I don't need the $500 million from your filthy trust fund. I only want the price of my freedom and compensation for the soul of the child you took from me. Sign the divorce papers, transfer $10 million in hush money into this escrow account, and leave me alone. Do not try to find me, because if a single private investigator sets foot in this territory, all data will be automatically sent to the FBI and the New York Times tomorrow morning. Eleanor stared at the screen, her usually arrogant face now ashen. She realized she had underestimated her daughter-in-law. The architect she once called a certified builder had now designed a trap far more sophisticated than her own gilded cage. William crushed the wine glass in his hand, but there was no anger left in his eyes, only terror. If this scandal were exposed, not only would the trust fund vanish, but both mother and son would face prison. The Vanderbilt family had no choice but to swallow their pride. Within 24 hours, the divorce papers were signed and the $10 million were transferred quietly. Sarah closed the laptop and took a deep breath of Seattle's free air. She was no longer Sarah Vanderbilt, the ornament inside a Connecticut mansion. She had reclaimed her name, her life, and an entirely new future. 7 years had passed since that fateful night of escape. In the dynamic city of Seattle, Sarah was no longer the frail woman standing behind the shadow of the Vanderbilt family. She was now the owner of a renowned eco-architecture firm, a woman who had just received a Global Sustainable Architecture Award. The Sarah of today was strong, captivating, and carried an authority that came from within, needing no credit card or family name to validate her worth. On a rainy afternoon, Eleanor came to her office. Gone was the arrogance of the former Iron Lady. She looked at least 10 years older, leaning on a cane, her thin shoulders trembling weakly. She had come to beg for something unthinkable. William was slowly dying from acute kidney failure. Due to a rare hereditary gene in the family line, no one in the organ donor registry or among distant relatives was compatible for a kidney donation. Eleanor had spent years using all her power and money to hire private investigators, and by sheer coincidence, she discovered that Sarah's biological indicators matched perfectly. Eleanor knelt at Sarah's feet, trembling as she held out a blank check. "Fill in any number you want, Sarah. Save my son. After all, you were once husband and wife. I beg you, have mercy." Sarah looked at the woman who had once poisoned her with cold, emotionless eyes. Just as she was about to refuse, the office door opened. A boy about 6 years old, with fluffy brown hair and deep-set eyes, ran in and hugged her leg tightly. "Mom, are you done yet? Let's go get ice cream like you promised." Eleanor froze. The boy looked exactly like William as a child, as if molded from the same cast. She stammered, tears spilling out in frantic hope. "This child, is he William's son? You were pregnant when you escaped, weren't you? My grandson, he's Vanderbilt blood. You must let him get tested. He's the only hope to save his father." Sarah smiled, a bitter, powerful smile. She bent down and gently stroked the boy's head, then looked straight into Eleanor's eyes. "You're mistaken. I truly miscarried my child because of the medicine you gave me that year. Have you forgotten?" Eleanor stood stunned. "Then who is this child? Why does he look so much like William?" Sarah lowered her voice, each word falling like a nail driven into the heart of the cruel woman. "Do you remember the model named Jessica? The one you paid and forced to abandon her newborn baby in a rundown orphanage to protect William's reputation so he could marry another woman? I found that child 5 years ago. I adopted him. Kevin is William's biological son, the blood of the Vanderbilt lineage that you heartlessly denied. But on legal papers, he's the lawful son of me and my current husband. He carries our surname and has been raised with love, not with your filthy calculations." Eleanor screamed and tried to rush forward to touch her son's only hope, but Sarah shielded Kevin in time and called security. Before she was dragged away in utter desperation, Sarah delivered her final words, her voice echoing through the vast office. "I will never let Kevin know who his biological father is or who you are. Not because I still harbor hatred, but because I want to protect his soul from the poison of your family. William will die from the karma he created, and this child, he will live happily as a free person, an architect of his own life."